Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7 p.m. I'd like to call to order the Merrimack Planning Board meeting for Tuesday, January 19th. Let me remind everyone who's going to address the board tonight to make sure the microphone's turned on, to sign in on the clipboard and then speak clearly into the microphone so the folks at home can hear you. Let me appoint both Nelson and Jeff to voting positions for Mike and Lynn tonight. And with that, Jillian, is there any planning and zoning administrators report?
There's a regional impact determination for the Farrell Vaughn subdivision on Wilson Hill Road. This is a 3-lot minor subdivision, tax map 4A lot 4, and staff recommends that the board determine that it's not a regional impact as it doesn't meet the criteria.
Thank you, Jillian. Is there any discussion by the board with respect to the regional impact recommendation? Well, it's the will of the board in terms of action.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we recognize that this does not have regional impact and treat accordingly.
Is there a second for Alistair's motion? Second by Jeff. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 6-0-0 to approve that. Anything else, Jillian?
Nope, that's all.
Any comments or questions for the staff by members of the board? Seeing none, let me also announce for the benefit of the folks that are here, item 6 on our agenda, which is the Brett W. Vaughn Wilson Hill 17-lot cluster subdivision. They have requested to continue that until February 2nd meeting. Is that correct, February 2nd? And so if you came to listen to that, there won't likely be any substance or any hearing on that item here tonight, and that way you wouldn't have to stay and wait through all of the other items on the agenda. The other Brett W. Vaughn 3-lot subdivision on the other side of the road is still on the agenda and would go forward. So if anyone's here waiting for the 17-lot one, no need for you to do that. See you on February 2nd. With that, item 3 on our agenda is discussion of the capital improvement program for the Merrimack Village District. Ron here. Hello, gentlemen. Not yet. Touch
Push.
it.
Okay. The green light.
Yep. Green light. Yep. Please introduce yourself and tell us about your CIP.
Hi, Ron Miner, Superintendent, Merrimack Village District.
And my name is Keith Pratt, and I'm President at Underwood Engineers, Consultant for the district.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Keith.
Thanks for having us in, and I know we try to come down here just about every year, and I think in front of you there is a copy of the current CIP.
That one? This one.
That would be the one. Yeah, so it actually reads a little better on 11 by 17, but hopefully you can see that. We did change the format this year, so the one that you have seen previously was in a little bit different of a format. This year we turned it into more of a summary table that looks out to about 2026 to give us a better snapshot of what's coming in kind of on a one-page view. Most of the projects that are on there are the same that we've had identified in the previous CIPs, with a couple exceptions. We've done some further master planning with the district, so some of the projects have changed and shifted a little bit. We did an updated master plan, and most importantly, the district did a great job this year successfully getting some grants for some asset management. So we've done some asset management planning at the district. These helped us develop some of the projects. So just running down them, the first few projects that are listed are current projects. We're listing the projects that are sort of ongoing to fiscal years 14, 15, and 16. The biggest one of those is the currently under construction is the iron and manganese water treatment plant that's being built down in Hollis to serve wells 7 and 8. That's about 50 to 70% through construction. Should be online this spring, summer. There are a couple ongoing well searches and well development projects that are ongoing, and those are listed here as well. What's going to come up here in the next couple years is some improvements to the storage tanks at Turkey Hill and Hutchinson. There was some planning done this year to identify those. There's going to be some cleaning and some recoating of those tanks, some safety improvements, new hatches, some ladders and some domes, some miscellaneous improvements there. We're also putting in some mixing to help keep the water quality fresh, so there's some mixing that's going to be installed inside those tanks. Following that, we're going to be seeing some work done at the Turkey Hill Booster Station. That serves the high pressure zone in town, and that's an old station that's tough to maintain. Parts are antiquated and unavailable. So there'll be a planning study in 2017, and then we propose to do improvements on that station in the following year in 2018. And there'll be a couple projects coming up at the wells, limes, some chemical feed improvements. We're going to be replacing and upgrading the lime stations and looking at some alternative chemicals for the wells to replace the lime, maybe caustic. The district's been doing a lot with GIS, SCADA, and we're looking to do some well level monitoring and tie that into the SCADA system so that we can monitor the wells on kind of on a live basis to make sure that there's not a drawdown that's unexpected. And then there's some capital improvements in for the transmission mains, some pump stations projects coming up in fiscal year 2019 to replace some controls and some aged pumps at well number 5, and as well as the Belmont booster station. And then there's some projects that are a little bit further out there that we're sort of tracking and looking at, and that's a new well site installation and possible well treatment. And those might be something targeted a little bit later in 19 and 20. And now that we have iron and manganese treatment at wells 7 and 8, probably the next well that we would view needing possible treatment would be well number 3, and that's going to be targeted for possible treatment in fiscal year 2020. One of the things you'll notice in the capital improvements plan, the district looks every just prior to a major capital improvements to do a little bit of a preliminary study, preliminary evaluation, preliminary design to better define the cost. So you'll see a smaller number up front, do a little effort to better define the project, and then we can update the budgets going forward. And then there's a few other projects that we've identified down here that we've working with the town. During the master planning project, we sat with the town to coordinate a couple of their projects so that we could make sure that we're doing things in the district that line up, bridge replacements, road improvements, and so they're listed here as well. McCaw Bridge, Bean Road Bridge, etc. And then the last two lines on this capital improvements plan is as a result of the asset management program. And the district has a lot of infrastructure in the ground. We've taken a look at the sustainable capital reserve contributions that we believe are necessary to keep that infrastructure in good shape. And so there's a target number that the district's looking to ultimately get to in terms of capital reserve contributions, and that's listed on the bottom, and it's just noted as a target at this point. We're not quite there in terms of meeting it, but we're working towards it, and we keep it on the capital improvements plan just to keep it in our radar as we move forward. And then the last thing you see on the capital improvements plan on the bottom is the estimated source of funds. So the top box is where we're proposing to use it, and on the bottom is where we're targeting the source to come from, whether it's going to be targeted for a bond through the SRF program, state revolving fund, pull it from capital reserves, or just take it right out of the budget in terms of the operating expenses. And so that gives an idea of how the district's proposing to fund it. So we felt this was a little bit easier to follow. Along with that is a 2-page summary kind of each of the projects. Sort of gives you a little bit of the description of what I gave you as I walked through them. So they sort of go hand in hand, and as noted, it's a lot similar to what we had there before, just in a different format. So that's what I had. I don't know, Ron, if you had anything to add, but certainly be
I'm good.
okay. Certainly be willing to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Before I ask questions, since Lynn's arrived and I had appointed these two gentlemen as voting members, we'll switch it around so it's for Mike and Vinny instead of for Mike and Lynn. So you're still voting members. So for next year's FY 2017 Capital Reserve Fund, it looks like your big expenditure is listed as a new well site installation. Have you guys identified a location that's got a good water source available to you?
We've identified a couple, an area we're working on right now. Mitchell Woods is one that we've identified a while back, and that's an ongoing. That's actually out in the out in the future a little bit.
You don't necessarily have to identify sites if it affects your ability to acquire them or access them. I'm just particularly interested in it because as long as I've been on the board, there's been a discussion about new well sites, and it's always been rather nebulous, and it looks like you've actually got one in the coming year, and that seems pretty exciting to me. I wanted to know more about it.
We do. And we've actually got another site that we're actively looking at right now, too.
So you think that there's actually going to be an acquisition in the coming fiscal year, and what kind of water production are you thinking you might get out of it?
Do you remember what, I know
I think it's
it's
without quoting us, it's about 600 gallons a minute. I mean, it's going to be equivalent to either well 6, or trying to replace the volume of well 6 or well 7. So I think it's been targeted around 600 gallons a minute.
Is it intended to be a replacement or new resource?
New resource.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 600 gallons a minute of new volume. Thanks. Comments, questions, Nelson?
Well, I had a similar question having to do with the Mitchell site. Is the Mitchell site been acquired, or is that still, has it been acquired by the district?
I don't think it has. I can't remember exactly.
That's been an ongoing
I know.
for a while, and I'm trying to recall. I think we have the easements in place.
Okay.
I know that the drawings have been done. I believe Conservation has seen them, but it's something I'll have to follow up on.
One of the things we did do this year is there was a preliminary plan done on the Mitchell Woods site in the effort to help advance the securing of the easements so the town understood what was going to be happening there, where the building was going to be sited, where the access road was going to be sited. And I think that was just recently completed, so I'm not sure exactly on the status of the easement, but it is in progress.
So you're speaking of an easement because the town already owns the land. It's on
Correct.
town land.
It is town land, and
Yeah.
whether it's an easement or an agreement or what form it takes, I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Other members with comments or questions? Tom?
Yeah, Mitchell Woods is under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission for management.
Thank you.
I think you were in front of them a couple of months ago. Not sure, but I seem to remember an agenda item on it, or at least a discussion of some sort.
Maybe they had a discussion. I know it's been a while since I've been.
Yeah, okay. Under town coordinated projects, you go all the way down to Bedford Road Bridge, and the ending piece of that whole series is the Route 3 bridge. Is that outside the window of your study period for this CIP?
When was the Route 3 bridge? Do you know?
It'll be sometime around 2020, 2021 maybe, I'm not sure.
No, then it's inside the window of the CIP, so we can certainly double check on that one.
Because we've got 3 lined up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, well, we'll make sure we keep that one on the list.
and that's going to cause all kinds of havoc.
No,
What do you mean, when
but
you put that one in? When
Yeah.
that bridge is,
Yeah.
oh, God.
yeah, the traffic's going to be bad for a while for that. But it's a good function of the planning board to sort of get the connections made for these kinds of things that are going to happen, so you have it on your plan. A couple of the smaller dollar items that you have, a rate update for $15,000, or some of these things are either smaller dollar than I'm used to seeing as a capital, quote, capital expenditure, or things that don't seem like you're buying capital, like a rate plan. Do those things make this list by virtue of just being sort of an unusual expenditure, or do you guys regard those as being capital?
I don't think, we don't regard it as necessarily being capital. This is just more of us to help plan sort of the things in the 10-year window. It's an unusual expense only in that we recommend doing it every 2 or 3 years. So by rights, the rate update probably should have a couple things out in the every third year. But if you look down, because we don't consider it as a capital, we actually identify some of these smaller line items as just budgets out of the operating, as costs were coming out of the operating
Oh, I
budget.
see. I got you.
So we do differentiate down there in the bottom. So in that case, the rate study is actually just being targeted to come right out of the operating budget.
So a $15,000 rate study is something you have a consultant that you hired that does that for you?
Right.
And they compare your rates to other municipalities, or how do they?
That's part of it, but primarily we use the capital plan too to project rate adjustments to support the.
I got you.
Anticipating my next question.
Go get them.
I was going to say, how are you going to fund it?
Right.
I mean, you're talking $25 million worth of improvements, you know. I was just curious, and you're going to undertake a rate study to take care of that.
It is, the rate studies, I actually brought one, but the rate studies are done with a 3-year look back and a 5-year look ahead. So we can sort of get a picture of what things looked like for the rates for the previous 3 years and the expenditures and revenues, and then we used the capital planning and the projections on where the budget will go for 5 years to start establishing what we think the rate adjustments would be. And we did that in 14 as the last significant rate update because of the large capital project for the iron and manganese facility. And at the time, we projected about a 10% rate increase to support that. But due to just some either increased revenues and sharper budgeting, we actually anticipate it's going to be less than that at this point. So there's going to be a rate increase probably coming, but it's going to be closer to, we're looking at 6%.
About 6%.
About 6% now. So yeah.
I guess one of the things that you remind us of every year, but it's worth saying just for the benefit of anyone who's enjoying this presentation for the first time, is that all of your capital improvement program is supported by your rates. There's no tax impact to any of this.
Right, that's correct.
Tell me about the
And the state, of course.
and the state. Yes, of course. Tell me about your projects on hold. What made you put them on hold, and what's sort of the thinking for what their future is?
These were projects, you can speak to the office, I'll speak to the first two, but the blending of wells 6, 7, and 8 was identified for a while back as a capital improvements project, but there was, to support that, there was some pilot work done in the field to actually physically blend it, to pump the wells for a while. And it was found that it may not be supported, and there was still some concern on the water quality at well number 6. And because we ended up going to iron and manganese treatment at wells 7 and 8, to maintain that infrastructure, we decided to put the blending project on hold. And if you actually remember, the district actually supported a bond to blend it, and then we paused that project.
So 7 and 8 are productive, and 6 is still offline because it's not blended?
Correct.
Gotcha.
6 is offline. 7 and 8 have always been online, but now they'll be treated to remove the iron and manganese.
Okay.
And then the production of well number 2, frankly, some of the reports that have been done by the hydrogeologist and Underwood as a consultant to the town has been suggesting that we could probably, to help increase yield and supply, we could actually support increase in the production of well number 2. But there's been some reluctance and concern to do that with the staff and the district, just because it's a good well, it's working. I think the current train of thinking is let's keep well enough alone. So for now, we've sort of put that one on hold too, and so that one sits.
Well, would your well monitoring effort help that out?
That's part of
Give you
it.
better data?
That's part of it, and I think the concern is some of the thought process on well number 2 is we've been looking at shaving peaks. We have high demands in the summer, and to be able to use well number 2 if we need it as a peak shaver or as when the high demands come on, as opposed to increasing the use of it all the time. That's sort of some of the thinking, but I think for now, with the increase of 7 and 8, we felt it wasn't necessary to put on now, so we're just going to it's going to be put on hold for that reason. It's always a option because the belief is that the supply's there, but it's not something that we were comfortable doing yet.
Okay.
Tell me some more about the peak shaving on well 2. So it's 1,100 gallons per minute is not necessarily something that you're utilizing all year round when the demand isn't there, and it just.
No, I think
It's permitted, what, 1,500 gallons a minute?
it was permitted for more than what it's currently capable of pumping. The pumps that are in there can only pump, I can't remember the numbers. I think they're around 1,100, 1,200.
1,100 gallons.
But it's permitted for 1,500, so the thought was to put a higher capacity pump in there to be able to get more water out of it. And the only time it was really thought to be needed is when we have high demands in the summer.
I see. I got you.
So that we'd put in a variable frequency pump, just only pump it at 1,500 gallons a minute we need it, but pump it at 1,100 gallons a minute the rest of the time. But there was still some even concern with that, so until we really felt we needed it, we just put that project on hold.
What kind of concerns are there with that?
It works. Don't touch it. I mean, it's a great well. It's a high-quality well. There's always concern when you increase production and what might happen.
What kinds of things might happen?
Iron and manganese. We're dragging that in. Well 3 has got iron and manganese in it. We're
gotcha.
treating 7 and 8 for that now. Well 2 is a very clean well, and it's one of those. It's there if it's needed. It's kind of off to the side. If we really need that capacity, then it's something we could do relatively cheaply. Yeah, quickly. It's
No, I understand.
not-
The drawing in of contaminants was what I didn't know about, so that's what I was going for an answer. So back to well
We're
6.
not suggesting that would happen. It's just
No,
something-
of course, yeah. I get it. That's the risk. So does well 6 have any future right now, or if it's not being blended and that project is on hold, is there any plan to do anything with it?
Not right now, but it's a site that does have good yields. So we'll just leave it there. If down the road we decide to do some sort of a treatment plant, again, it's there. So I guess it's something we'd have to weigh out at the time. Versus
Right.
the new wells are hard to come by, so you hate to close it up.
I understand. Okay. Other comments or questions by members of the board? Nelson?
One other question on a slightly different subject, and maybe not too much to do with the capital, is the status of the salt monitoring. About a year or two ago, we went through quite a discussion here with salt monitoring and so on, and was showing some trending in the unfavorable direction. What's the status of that right now?
It's an
the outlook.
ongoing. We're
Pardon?
still watching it. It's ongoing. We're still watching. It's up and down. Not a whole lot of change as far as where the levels were. I don't have those numbers for you, but we're still watching it and trying to educate who we can.
I don't necessarily want to add to what you have to do to cover your obligations already, but is there some charter or report or something that's available that could be forwarded to the department just to distribute to us so we could look at it?
Oh, absolutely. Do you have the old salt study? I mean, that's certainly
Years ago we did, yeah.
Yeah.
okay. That's something we can get.
Yeah,
that
you guys
back
had
to
all sorts of great charts that were
Yep,
showing different trends
definitely.
and things. So
Yeah, I'd like to see updates of that from time to time.
yeah,
I think
certainly
that-
not make you come and talk about it or any of that kind of stuff, but if you could email it to the office, they'll send it to all of us, and we'll just have it for more information. That's
And in the master plan that was issued to the district in November of 2014, it's a little over a year old now, there is some discussion on salt controls for help district and some planning and thinking is there as well. So that may be also something of interest that the board may want to read.
Thank you for that. So the other project on hold is your office. You not do anything with it for now?
No, that was someday.
It's been on hold for 20 years.
At some point we'll see a new office.
Understood.
We're still making do what we have.
All right. Manageable situation?
Yeah.
Okay. Other comments or questions? What's the will of the board with respect to ranking the items on their CIP? We do have somewhere in my stuff a reminder of what our ranking choices are, which range from urgent as the highest level through necessary, desirable, deferrable, premature, and inconsistent for 6 levels. The department doesn't appear to have made any suggested rankings for these, but by the nature of their business, I would say that most of them are going to fall into that either necessary or urgent category, depending on how far they've put them planned out, because the only thing they undertake for their capital are things that are necessary or urgent.
Yeah.
They don't sort of have any parks and things on their plan.
Are all the things that we're looking at on here all going to be voted on in each thing, or was it, because I kind of get confused when he's talking about some of it being CIP or like capital reserves, like, is it
Sure,
all
sure.
those items below, is that all applicable?
It depends on how the board wants to address it. If you wanted to go through them by line item and vote on them, if you wanted to decide that certain of them don't fall under the capital improvement plan and exclude them, if you said, I want to vote on line 5, 7, and 11, you can do that. Whatever you guys choose to do. Nelson?
Well, Mr. Chairman, with the exception possibly of the items that we decided weren't really capital, I think this plan has been laid out in a way and developed in a way that is addressing necessary projects. I would be inclined to say all of these are necessary, and that it's a well-constructed plan, with the possible exception of those items that don't belong in capital, which has been pointed out to us, namely the rate update study, which is, I think, the only one, maybe.
Yeah, I think some of the other smaller ones are kind of the preliminary engineering of a bigger project, and so the preliminary still is
They
capital.
need to be necessary also, yeah.
Is there a second for Nelson's motion? Second by Lynn. The only discussion that I would add is I would suggest that the new well site acquisition in 2017 probably deserves the urgent rating rather than just necessary, since we every summer encounter shortages of water that turn my lawn brown.
Oh,
Nelson.
And, Mr.
God
Chairman, I
intended
would
it to
also
be green, it would rain.
What's that?
If God intended it to be green, it would rain.
Nelson.
I would also recommend that the Route 3 bridge be added to this as a town project for watching. They've got it, it was omitted from this list.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So, let's sort of reset things a little bit. Is your intention to that your motion include the Route 3 bridge and then a potential upgrade of that one well to urgent, or one of those things and not the other, or
I think it includes it.
both of those things?
Yes,
That was my second.
yeah.
And
okay.
Lynn seconded
My second
that same
agrees,
motion? Okay.
we're there.
With a little bit of tune-up to the motion.
Right.
Any other discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? There are now 7 of us, so 7-0-0 for that. Gentlemen, thank you for coming down. Thank you for offering to send that SALT information as well, since that's interesting to us. We have been pretty diligent at putting SALT restrictions on all the properties that we get a shot at
Thank you.
for those, and it's because of those studies that you sent us before. So
Thank you.
we're doing our
Yeah.
best to do what we can.
And the Conservation Commission is also very diligent about that.
Yes, not only with salt, but fertilizer as well for
Yes.
them. So.
Great. And just for my clarification, all these projects, with the exception probably the rate study, you classified as necessary,
And
with the exception of the new well site
As urgent.
installation you noticed as urgent.
Correct.
Okay.
And there'll be a memo that comes from the department that tells you all of that.
Oh, beautiful.
Well, now, if it's a budget item with the 2 at the bottom of the first grouping, that's not included in there, right? Only the CRF stuff. Capital
Right. Capital reserve stuff wouldn't be things that we rank at all, since you're just putting it into a capital reserve fund. But I think it's not an expenditure. It's just basically for budgeting for you guys. So
Yeah, the
That's a
bottom
little
2 lines, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, got it.
if you get to the point where you use that capital reserve fund to buy something, then that would get a ranking.
And then it would show up on the project list.
Right.
Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 4 on our agenda is the Monahan Companies as the applicant and Merrimack Premium Outlets LLC as the owner. And it's a conceptual discussion of a mixed-use development conditional use permit on a lot in the I-2 district. The parcel is located at 10 Premium Outlets Boulevard in the I-2 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts and Wellhead Protection Area, Tax Map 3C, Lot 191-2. Jillian, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
Yes, the applicant is here tonight to discuss a conceptual proposal to develop the vacant pad site at 10 Premium Outlets Drive. They received variances from 3 portions of the zoning ordinance on November 18th, 2015, to allow this concept to be presented to you. And it appears that the plan that was presented to the ZBA has been modified slightly to reduce overall square footage and parking, but I'll let them go into those details.
And we also, not that long ago, let them subdivide that parcel off, correct? please introduce yourselves again. Haven't seen you in a couple of years. And tell us about the conceptual design.
Yeah, go ahead. Good evening. My name is Tom Monahan. A little bit of history. The last time I think I spoke in front of this board was introducing Simon Properties to the development. I was the former owner of the 160-acre parcel. I bought it from Digital back in the mid-'90s, and my first meeting prior to the Simon meeting, but when we first bought the property, we met with the town, and the town, we had asked the town to rezone the property, and the town's, with the recommendation of the planning board and selectmen, town council, recommended it, and we moved forward. And when we won the vote, the promise I made to the community was that we're going to do something on those 160 acres that are going to be very special.
Tom, is your microphone on?
No. Do I have to start all over?
Yeah.
So we made the promise that it was going to be very special, and along the way, we had some very interesting prospects. Sun Microsystem came 30 days or so from introducing a plan to the town identical to the Burlington campus they wanted to put here. Then in the late 90s, the world ended, and they opted out. After that, another Fortune 500 was going to go forward, but that too didn't come to fruition. Then, before Simon came in, we introduced a plan that I hadn't seen it till the night it was introduced to the planning board, and it was over a couple of million square feet, and not a very good plan by very reputable developers, and they were summarily sent on their way home. Then the introduction to Simon, which we really had we between my partner and myself had quite a vetting process, and the proof is in the pudding. They came through with everything they said that they would do. One of the issues that we negotiated right to the end is I wanted to retain the rights to own Parcel A, which is tonight being introduced to you people. And due to, believe it or not, some securities exchange issues, I couldn't keep it. So we went forward and made a deal that, 5 years out, we would take a good look at it and see where we stood, and hence the reason why I'm sitting here tonight, because I have entered into an agreement with Simon Property with their approval and support, and we're going to introduce to you something tonight that I think that I will be as proud of as I am of the outlets. And with that, I want to introduce Gordon Leedy from VHB, who was the same engineer who brought forth the Simon plan, the outlets, and the one thing that Simon told me after they bought the property is they said, never let an engineer show you property, because they didn't realize the topography change and the elevation change and the ledge and the blasting that had to take place. But at the end of the day, I'm very proud of the Simon development. I think that Gordon's going to substantiate how that they stood up to their end of the bargain, and hopefully I'm going to bring something forward to you people that will make you folks just as happy. Thanks, and with that, I'm going to go back to the peanut gallery.
Thank you, Tom. You don't have to run away. You can stay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Gordon Leedy, and just to minor correction to the record, I'm not an engineer. I'm a landscape architect and planner with VHB in Bedford. And I just wanted, we just wanted to give an overview of what the plans are and sort of seek your input. We understand that this is completely non-binding and an open discussion of the issues, but we are hoping to address all of the issues that you and the town might have in bringing this project forward. In front of you are hard copies of all of these slides, so you don't have to necessarily turn around and look at the screen, or I guess it's on the screen in back as well. But just to give everybody, I think everybody knows the property that we're talking about. It is the site of Merrimack Premium Outlets. It is an out parcel that was kind of a remainder parcel as a part of the original development, and it was programmed for a 200-room hotel and 3 or so kind of family-themed, restaurants. And that was what was included, just so you know, was included in the DOT permitting, the off-site traffic improvements, and also in the discussions with the town and with MVD with regard to water supply. So, as Tom indicated, he has had multiple discussions with folks in town, including Fidelity Investments and Atrium, or I can't remember what they're called. Marquette. Marquette. And you can see from this this plan that this particular out parcel, which is, I wonder if I can get the laser pointer to work. This is the portion of land that we're talking about, and it really is in the center of a huge number of employees and also residents of the town. But the major employment base of not only of Merrimack, but arguably of this part of New Hampshire is kind of within a half a mile to a mile radius of this site. So kind of giving up that opportunity to do something special just because we had initially conceived it as being something smaller seemed like a real wasted opportunity. So what we are proposing is a mixed-use development, and we had gone to the ZBA as Jillian indicated, and were successful in gaining relief from your zoning ordinance to allow a mixed-use development under the conditional use permit regulations within the I-2 district. Right now, it's only allowed in the I-3 district. And furthermore, we obviously don't have 500 feet of frontage on DW Highway, so that was another variance. And the parcel that this is located on is only 20 acres instead of 50, which was also one of the provisions in the CUP regulations. So all of those three pieces of relief were granted by the ZBA in November of last year. And so what we are proposing is a development that includes the hotel, but also includes some residential use, and I'll get into specific numbers in a moment, some office use, and retail and restaurant uses. Many of these uses would be allowed as of right in the I-2 district, but having them on a site together does a couple of things. It actually reduces the peak traffic flows because you have shared trips and reduces the overall demand for parking because you have shared parking space use. And it really creates a place where none exists today. And what we've all heard from the large employers in the area is that one thing that's missing in Merrimack is a vital kind of place like, if you look at what's attractive to young professionals, particularly millennials, they want to live in Boston. They want to live in Portsmouth. They want to live in places where you can walk to restaurants and bars and perhaps do some service shopping and live close to where they work. So the residential component is envisioned to be primarily one-bedroom and studio apartments, maybe some two-bedroom apartments, but we haven't quite figured the details of that out, but they are primarily to serve as places where a young employee of Fidelity may want to live, or for that matter, might want to live on a relatively short-term basis. Again, the details of that are being kind of worked out as we go. The hotel, similarly, is a need that is not being met in this area. So Fidelity and Atrium and Colesman and BAE all have people that come to their sites for training, they might be clients that are visiting, and there's no convenient place for them to stay. Likewise, if they want to have a get-together, the capacity of their facilities, I know at Fidelity, the capacity of their facilities is quite limited for training events and so forth. So this would be an ideal opportunity to create some synergy between these large employers and businesses who are already citizens of Merrimack and a new development. The office space, too, is something that, they may have needs for some kinds of office. I know Atrium is looking for, they just built that new building, and they're already sort of scouting around for additional space. From time to time, Fidelity has, actually, they leased that 40 Continental building, so from time to time they have needs for additional office space as well. So there's a market opportunity here, and there is the ability to provide enough kind of center of gravity for all of these things to function synergistically and really do something that hasn't, frankly, been done in southern New Hampshire, with the possible exception of Portwalk in Portsmouth. And that's kind of the model that we have in mind. With this kind of density, we are going to need to provide structured parking, which, again, is nothing new to Fidelity. I mean, probably half of their parking is in parking structures. But it is an additional cost, so you need to balance that against the kind. That's another thing that leads to the need to do perhaps a little more density than some of the more suburban projects have had. So these are just a couple of, I would characterize them as massing views, and the idea is to do retail and which in these diagrams is indicated as red. So retail and restaurants on the ground floor and as a kind of liner building around the parking deck. The hotel would be adjacent to the retail and kind of between the retail and the office building, and the office building would be on the corner. And the other thing that I'll mention now that is an important feature of this is that we need to figure out a way that we can phase this. So it's unlikely that this is all going to be built at the same magic moment, because we need to have sort of tenants or customers to occupy these spaces, or we're not going to be able to finance the deal. So there's going to be kind of a dance, and this is likely to be built over, I'd say, a 5 to 7 year period. This is another view from sort of an aerial view from the Industrial Drive Spartan Way Premium Outlets Boulevard direction. And then this is from as if you were probably sitting on top of the cell tower on the top of the hill. So this is looking back toward the intersection of Continental and Industrial. So at a glance, the program is for 165,000 square feet of office, and these are, at this point, I would characterize them as working numbers. We haven't really nailed these down to any great degree, but 165,000 square feet of office, 100,000 square feet of retail and restaurant use, and it's probably going to be something like an 80-20 split retail and restaurant, 120-room hotel, 180 bedrooms for the residential. And as I said, that will likely be a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. And as I indicated, it's likely to be phased in some way. So when you go through those numbers and you look at the town's parking requirements, you come up with something on the order of 1,530 spaces required. But what we have done, and this is highly dependent on what the exact numbers of the final plan are. But there is a methodology that is pretty well accepted. It's been around for about 20 years. This was shared parking as based on a series of studies done by the Urban Land Institute. And what they did was go around and look at actual parking utilization from different kinds of land uses within these kind of mixed-use development scenarios. And so they have very detailed parking accumulation rates for every hour. You have a peak demand, and then you have a percentage of peak demand that might be occupied during any given hour of the day. And it's different for residential. You can sort of picture in your mind how residences are obviously more utilizing parking at night, and offices are using it during the day. So you can kind of cross-count those and share the parking. So long story short, what we have come up with as a preliminary number is around 1,050 with peak demand. And to that demand number, you have to add about 10% for circulation, so that you never want all of the parking spaces to be filled up, because then you have a hard time finding a space, or you have to wait for somebody to leave. So adding that 10% is 105. So the peak supply that is required based on this methodology would be about 1,150 parking spaces. And what we're showing on this plan is a parking garage with about 1,100 just short of 1,100 parking spaces. And then a surface lot overflow that has 120 parking spaces. And then there is some on-street parking. There are about 62 parking spaces on the street. And that actually helps, because it kind of gives a vitality to, makes it look like a street, like we expect a street to be. So we are showing 1,215 parking spaces, which is in excess of what we think we're going to need. Some of that parking may shift from the parking deck to perhaps below grade underneath the residential, for example. But we'll have to we'll have to figure that out, because if they're dedicated to one use or another, they can't be shared. So that's kind of a different calculation. In terms of traffic, we have come to our senses and have determined that a roundabout is the best solution at the main entrance to the out parcel. We did a trip generation estimate based on a previous program, which was actually a little bit more aggressive than this that we're presenting tonight. So these numbers are perhaps a little bit overstated, but we're calculating that approximately 390 additional weekday PM peak hour trips would be created by this development, 80 entering and 310 exiting, and 250 additional Saturday midday trips with 310 entering, and actually a reduction of 60 exiting because there's more stuff to do on the site. So, and there is adequate capacity everywhere except for at the front door, where we're proposing this roundabout to solve the circulation issue. Adequate capacity on Continental, adequate capacity on Industrial Drive and at the interchange. I will add, just as a sidebar, that and Robin Bauza from our office, who's our transportation engineering lead, is still gloating about this. We counted traffic from the existing condition back in it was August or September of last year, and ran through compared them with the projections that we had made when we were permitting the outlet center, and we were off a little bit. We were off by 25 trips on the PM peak and 5 trips on the Saturday peak. So that's pretty astounding, actually.
Too high or too low?
We were too low, actually, but it was 5 out of 1,300. So I think that's pretty good margin of error.
Within statistical variance.
Right. And then I did take a quick look at, although we've not done and incidentally on the traffic issue, we have not yet done, but we will do a full traffic impact and access study as a part of the conditional use permit process. In terms of fiscal impact, that was another question that staff mentioned. I took a quick look at comparable assessments in town and developed a list of what I thought were reasonably average rates of assessment. And it looks like for this program, this would create about almost $40 million in additional assessed valuation for the town, leading to almost $1 million in additional tax revenue at the 2015 rate. So I think of that, about $200,000 is attributable to the town budget, and I can't imagine a scenario where the fiscal impact of that would not be positive. In addition, there was about $620,000 in school taxes that would be paid, and I would venture to guess that with the mix of units and the kind of development that we're talking about, we would have zero impact on the schools. So that leads us to the next kind of issue. There are a few things that we need to discuss, and one is that there is a kind of remnant zoning that surrounds this site. Obviously, you have the residential neighborhood to the north, Sergeant Acres, but what very few people realize is that both the Fidelity site to the center line of Industrial Drive, as well as what remains of what used to be the Camp Sargent Road right-of-way, that's all still zoned residential, because I suppose nobody had any reason to rezone it. So in your ordinance, there are two things. There is a 100-foot buffer buffer, undisturbed buffer, along both Continental Boulevard and along the Sergeant Acres right-of-way. I'm going the wrong direction here. So that is in this darker red. And then there's also a 200-foot setback, building setback, from a residential zone line. And so inasmuch as this entire area along Continental Boulevard is still zoned residential, there's a 200-foot building setback from that. Likewise, there's a 200-foot building setback from the center line of Industrial Boulevard, or Industrial Drive. So we will be suggesting to you that that is not really necessary. Because of the character of the neighborhood, because of the way development has taken place, Atrium across the street is an industrial use. Fidelity across the street, although it's a large site, is also a commercial industrial use. So we think that it makes sense for this site to be treated the same way. Our proposal would not be to ask for any relief from any of the setbacks or buffering that are currently in place and required along the Sergeant Acres property line. So we get that, but it doesn't make any sense to maintain that along Continental Boulevard or Industrial Drive, in my opinion. So the effect of that, we have a few incursions into that. The westerly side of the parking deck is within that 100-foot or 200-foot building setback. We're showing a surface parking area that is within that 100-foot buffer. But if you look at the reality of the situation, there is a parcel of land owned by the town. It's old right-of-way, as I indicated, that is between that section of the site and Continental Boulevard. So, in effect, that's about 180 feet. The parking area to edge of pavement is about 180 feet. Whereas in this location, the buffer to the edge of pavement is about 225 feet. So we're not really talking about an effective, a massive effective diminution of the buffer. We're just trying to make development of the site possible in an orderly fashion. Likewise, along Industrial Drive, there are a few minor incursions into that 100-foot or 200-foot building setback. I would submit to you that it still doesn't really make any meaningful visual difference. There still is a fairly significant setback from Industrial Drive. And, if it's really important to you, then we can perhaps take a look at modifying that, the building in those locations. I mean, the buildings may change a bit in any case, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. So really the parking issue is something that we'll have to discuss. The setbacks from Continental and Industrial are something that we're going to need to discuss. Obviously, we're going to have discussions with MVD and other town agencies to sort of vet out any issues that there might be on the infrastructure side. We're confident that the traffic is going to work without much, if any, kind of off-site improvement required. The stormwater management, we had contemplated development of this site, and we're confident we can make that work. So we're well aware of the 10 or so criteria in the conditional use permit regulations, and we're confident we can give the board a good answer on all of those. So with that, I guess I would be happy to hear what the board has to say and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you for the presentation. I think it's an exciting project to learn more about and to see how it progresses through. I do have a few questions, and I'm sure other members of the board do as well. Let's see. Tell me a little bit more about what you have in mind with the retail and whether it's intended to serve kind of your hotel and residential, or is that really going to be something that is really trying to draw people to the site to go to the restaurant or whatever?
I think it's a little of both, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I think that there is a need that we've heard from, I've heard from Fidelity, that they would like to have one or more quality restaurants that they can use as a gathering space so they don't have to have parties on their own campus, for example. You know, for group get-togethers or whatever, if you have a celebration and you want to get together, large Fortune 500 companies are kind of averse to having those take place on their campus, so it's not as convenient as it could be for them. And certainly by having a residential component, you would gain some kind of captive audience, and you'd want to provide services that are available to them. Our goal here would be, you know, I think if you look at what's, I think Port Walk is actually a really excellent comparison. And if you haven't been there, you ought to go have dinner, or you know, or whatever. It's a very interesting place, and the retail is really more kind of boutique-y type stuff. It's certainly not big box. You know, you may get some kinds of nationals to go into a place like this, but we're not talking large spaces. We're talking about, you know, probably, you know, I'm guessing 25 or 30,000 square feet max. So that wouldn't be, you know, what would go into a mall. You know?
No, that's Walgreens.
Yeah, right. Well, it's bigger than Walgreens, but it's still, it maybe is a Gap or something like that. But I mean, there's already all this retail. All of that retail is up the hill. So, you know, this is going to be more kind of service oriented and restaurant oriented, in my opinion.
Okay. So when you said 80-20 with the retail restaurant versus other retail, 20% restaurant, 80% other stuff?
Yeah. In terms of square footage.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of gets at my question. With all the retail up on the hill and a couple of other things, it seems like getting people who don't work or live at Fidelity or somewhere within that short distance to come to the site to use some retail services that are there, whatever those might be. You know, I don't know if the Gap is a great example, or
yeah, I don't either. I'm not a leasing guy.
I don't know, a cleaners or whatever there might be, dry cleaner. It seems like there's so much that draws people up the hill. It's hard to make people say, well, in a separate effort, I'm going to go park down here and go to a few small shops that are there. And I don't want to see something built that really doesn't get utilized well or doesn't function well. So,
well, and that's also part of the phasing. I mean, it's not the quick answer to that, Mr. Chairman, is that it's not going to be built unless it's utilized. So, I mean, Tom, if you want to speak to some of this, that would be good, because you know a lot more about this than I do.
Hi, Tom Monahan again. Yeah, we've, as Gordon had mentioned, we've sat down with a lot of the commercial industrial users in the neighborhood, and it's sort of a charrette type thing, and they've asked for specific uses, even, you know, in as much as even potentially the cleaners, the get a haircut. They've even talked about potentially a daycare facility. To that effect, it would, interestingly enough, Simon had the same same question, because they don't want to see empty retail space down below, because people may think it's telling a story about the outlets.
Well, and they also don't want someone competing for tenants for. On the front page of this, there's a second phase shown on the outlet mall part, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
you got
Yep.
more on your picture than exists out there.
Yeah.
We will not have outlet shops there.
No.
That was an agreement that Simon and myself made, that there will be no outlet shops. It would be specific to the site, whether it would be almost a destination to itself, whether it be the residents, the people working in the office space, or Fidelity, McKay, or BAE, or Colesman. They can have a place where they can, frankly, if they want to, drop their laundry off.
Sure.
So that's really what we're thinking, more of a downtown type of thing, you know. Yeah, it's you know, if you go down to downtown Nashua, it's more like that's how I envision it, and I believe that's.
I think it's a great vision, but I don't know whether the numbers of 100 or 180 bedrooms gets you enough traffic to make those stores work without bringing in other people from the outside that are going to come be their patrons too.
Correct. I definitely wouldn't depend on the 180 bedrooms at all, and so it's really something that collaboratively, along with our abutters, that we're going to have to design that we know that it's going to be utilized by them.
Yeah.
And frankly, if it is not going to be utilized by them, that's why we're talking about the phasing. There may be something other than retail, i.e. even parking under the residential units or under the offices, something. So that but this is what has been during meetings with the abutting industries that they have requested that we go forward with. So
Okay.
but if it's certainly not a need, I don't need empty buildings.
No, I understand that. While you're here, Tom, talk a little bit about the hotel as well, because I think I understand where your answer will go, and I understand the site a little bit. There's certainly been some comments made publicly in the internet and different places where people are saying, well, do we really need another hotel? We've got this old one down the street that's been out of business forever, and somebody could do something with that. There's all these million suggestions that people have when they hear about a development, about different things, different ways that could be done with it. And I want to give you the opportunity to speak to that a little bit. And like I said, I kind of have a sense of where your answer will go, but I want to give you the chance to.
Sure. That in itself, actually along with the residents, was the most requested by the industry surrounding. You know, there are a lot of old hotels in town, and there are no hotels with meeting spaces. Literally, we're also including a meeting space area up to 300 or so people can gathering, and that has been a huge request by the industries. And the people that we have hired, the architects that we have hired, are the same architects who did Portwalk, and are the same architects who actually own the hotel, Procon, and in Portsmouth. Hooksett, New Hampshire company, which I'm proud to say, and one of the largest architectural firms in the state, if not the largest, and one of the largest construction companies in the state, and they developed Portwalk, and they are our partners in this from day one going forward. And we are totally trying not to reinvent, but certainly to bring the Portwalk attitude to Merrimack.
I've never been to Portwalk, but I'll take Gordon's invitation to
go.
give it a look at some point. But on the notion of walking, I get what, Gordon, you were talking about with making it walkable, with perhaps what millennials are looking for, a place to live. As you work through your plan, more sidewalks, lots more sidewalks, and definitely ones that lead off of your site. If people from Atrium want to come over,
Yep.
they need a place to get there. From Fidelity and all of that, you got to beef that up quite a bit. I get what you're saying about the parking. I want to see that analysis with,
Yep.
with some of the science behind it. I assume that means that if I owned a condo or rented an apartment in this residential, that I don't have my space. I've just got a space in the garage, and
Right.
I got to wrestle with everybody else for it. I'm not sure how that affects the marketing.
Well, and we haven't given that a huge amount of thought because right now we're still at a very conceptual stage. One thing that you will note if you look at the plan carefully is that there is connectivity that is shown between all of these buildings. So you can actually get from building to building without going outside, which I think is a good thing in the wintertime. I mean, I had the same question as you, Mr. Chairman. So it kind of boils down to, structured parking is expensive by any means. It's probably a little less expensive to do a garage structure than it is to put it underneath a building, which, and if it's dedicated to a use, then you can't share it. So,
5 or 6 years ago, it was $20,000 a space on something I
yeah,
was working on for
it
garages.
depends on what you do to the garage. In this situation where we have buildings on two sides, that's two sides that don't have to be, extraordinarily treated with architectural treatments. The other thing that they're doing now that is really actually, I think, very cool is they're making green walls out of parking structures and actually growing plants on the walls, which kind of makes them, at least if not disappear, makes them a lot friendlier to look at than even a really attractive architectural treatment might.
Overall, I've said before the board, I'm not interested in seeing excess pavement or more parking than we need. And some of our bigger developments, our calculations tend to push Shaw's, for example, or Home Depot, for example, to have acres of parking that just is not getting used.
Yeah.
Outlet Mall's a little bit different because of the peaks with the Christmas season and all of that.
Well,
but
and
most of the time,
also
I don't
it's-
use it all either.
Also, it's a matter of, well, you have to walk that fine line because you need enough parking. I mean, if you don't have enough parking, it's a problem. And but there are ways that we may be able to even engineer a deck, for example, to be added onto at a later date. So maybe it doesn't all get built at once.
And not necessarily something has to be solved today. I'm just saying that I'm willing to listen to the arguments about reducing the parking number from the calculations based on the math and the science that you talked about doing. I'm intrigued by that. I think that could work. I think that your office will probably have the same demands on your parking where they want to have spaces reserved for the firm that's leasing space there for their own employees and for their own customers. Because if I have to go there to see my accountant and I can't find a parking space, I'll pick an accountant that's got a parking lot.
Yeah, right.
So that's interesting.
Or a lawyer.
Yeah, law offices are that way. We stay over in Concord, though. There's no courts near here. The road access out the back that goes to the beginning of Camp Sargent Road or out onto Continental Boulevard, what's the plan for that?
That is not intended to change from the condition that it's in today, which is a gated, Opticom-controlled emergency access. So that roadway will serve as a principal access to the site as it was intended from the beginning, but that's not a through road. There won't be any connection to Camp Sargent Road.
Okay. With respect to your discussion about the buffers and the different conditions, I'm amenable to having that discussion. I think that your approach I can't speak for everybody on the board, but to me that seems like a reasonable bit of suggestion. And that's all that I wrote down that I was taking notes as I was listening. Does anyone else have other comments or questions? Nelson?
Well, yeah, I had similar comments to yours, Mr. Chairman, but maybe with a little different look at it. One thing, I think I would be also amenable to doing something with that setback requirement, either without getting into spot zoning and things like that. We have to be careful, but I think we could ask our staff to look into that and see what we might do that would help
Well,
them and not hurt us.
Just speaking to that, I think that as a part of the conditional use permit process, within the regulations, you have broad latitude to waive any buffers or setbacks.
Okay, then, if that's the case, then I would be amenable to discussing that. And, okay. I'm also much in favor of making this a pedestrian-friendly place, both from access point of view and from internal
Yep.
pedestrian, and even some consideration for bicycle, if that can be worked in here. I think that one of the thoughts that I had, when you said you weren't going to change anything in the connection to Camp Sargent Road, but certainly a bicycle connection into the old Camp Sargent Road would be
Yep.
be a safer place to bike all the way up to
Yeah,
exit
that's
11
absolutely
if you want to
right.
go there.
Yeah.
But it would it'd be something I'd like you to look at. Okay.
Yep.
And I want to go to Portsmouth and find this place that you talk of. It sounds interesting. Fort Walk.
It's kind of hard to miss, Mr.
Is it?
Disco.
I
yeah.
haven't been there in a while, but is it downtown?
Yeah, it's on the you know where the Parade Mall used to be?
No.
Okay,
by
it's
that name,
it's
no.
on. Do you know
I
what
know
the name
Market
of the streets
Square.
are?
Take me from Market Square.
Well, it's west of Market Square. So do you
West
know where the
of-
parking garage is? That
Yeah,
street.
yeah.
It's on that street.
Okay, all right, I get the picture. I'll find it. The other thing is, I think that probably we want to consider this as having regional impacts. If we talk about regional impact tonight, I think we might want to say that it has regional impact. That'd be my guess, and that'd be a board discussion at some point. And I think that's all I have right now. But thank you for it's good thinking gone into this and modern thinking, and I like it.
All the credit belongs to Mr. Monahan.
Okay.
Nelson, thank you for remembering regional impact. My understanding, and Jillian can help me with this, is that when they have a formal submission
Yeah.
is when that determination is made, and
Yeah.
the preliminary wouldn't be at that level
Yeah,
yet.
I agree with
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Perfect. Lynn?
Referring to Port Walk, I'd like you to take a look at what they do with parking and how they handle parking before you come back to us with a submission, because from what I understand, there are some significant issues.
Fair enough.
Well, point well taken.
Yeah, they got sued at one
Port
point
with a
for
P.
the parking garage
Um,
arrangement.
I heard what you said in answer to the chairman's comments about whether you were going to have access into Camp Sargent Road. I remember that little piece of road. We had a lot of painful discussions of walking through the woods to try and find a way in for the fire department that the fire department would buy into. I'm sure we all remember walking down the other side of the hill and
Yep.
wading through.
Yep.
Are you convinced that I know cars are going to go down that road to get into the parking deck or onto the surface parking. Are we sure that the fire department's going to buy into that? Because you could clutter up their ability to... the whole purpose of that road was to get in a hurry without having the road blocked. And we then made a specially wide sidewalk so they could drive their
Right.
engines all the way up the sidewalk.
Well,
to
and
get up.
that's not changing.
You would still guarantee to make it safe for the fire department?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It's going to be, right now, that road is, I want to say it's 16 feet wide. And
That's correct.
it'll be more like 30 feet wide when we're
Thank you. That's
done.
what I was getting at. I would hate to see we lost. We made so much effort to get that in without
Yep.
having to go down
Yep.
the back into the residential area. I would hate we lose that. That's my other comment. Obviously, I'd like to see the traffic numbers. I'd like to see how you're going to get how things will work out when at the junction with the Industrial Drive.
Yep.
I look forward to talking with you and Robin when you produce some real numbers
Absolutely.
and we can discuss it. I certainly have some undoubted concerns, particularly of, people in the residential area going up to Starbucks to get a coffee in the morning and what the hell is going to happen. I just see some clashes which you sort of have skated over. Let me just leave it like that.
Well, we've got some big wide sidewalks up in that section on the other side of the road. It's like
Yeah, that's
20-foot wide sidewalk.
Yeah, I know.
Tom, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, a couple. As part of the pipeline discussions, I was talking to one of the people at Fidelity. I serve on the Rail Transit Authority, and he was asking me the status of the extension of the commuter line from Lowell to Manchester, because he has his corporation and his employees have a high interest in that, especially when they're trying to attract good talent. And we did discuss a lot of these amenities issues, and his comment about what some of his people were looking for were after-work gathering places.
Right.
Okay, which would be something that you haven't talked about in here. You were talking more formally about dinner, restaurants and those sorts of things. But they're more looking for places that they can go after work
Right.
and gather, where they don't have to go a long way to get there. Because right now it's pretty problematic for them to find those kinds of places. And those are the sorts of things that they said that they were interested in. So I'm sure you've already heard that. But I just wanted to reinforce that particular piece because it's just another layer to that type of a use for this type of a facility. And for once, we're congruent on sidewalks.
Got 'em going
Okay.
on that.
The other thing I wanted to ask is you're talking about shared parking. When they did the shared parking studies that they used, is there any indication or any consideration of the impact that public transportation would have on the usage of that parking?
Oh, yes. I mean, there's been a lot of, well, let me put it this way. You have one set of numbers for suburban sites, and you have another set of numbers for urban sites. Typically, urban sites are much better served by transit than suburban sites.
Right.
So, but that being said, there is, they have voluminous data on parking utilization by use, and there's no question that transit could reduce the number of, would potentially reduce the number of vehicles entering and exiting any of these sites. And typically, if you were to have rail transportation, for example, and you ran either a dedicated shuttle or a bus service connecting, this employment center here with a rail facility, it would open up a whole range of people that currently, kind of hell would freeze over before they drive up here from wherever they live down, south of here to southern New Hampshire. So, I mean, it all works hand in hand
Right.
toward moving people around in ways that they don't currently have the opportunity to now.
Yeah, because my note to myself was about the transportation to alleviate the parking. This type of development, in my opinion, makes this gives you that critical mass for the use of public transportation in that end of town. That means getting people to work at the outlets in addition to getting them to jobs in the retail and restaurant and hotel buildings, and then also for people to go there to use the facility, to take advantage of the different facilities you have in there. But that brings a whole other discussion because of the way that public transportation is structured in New Hampshire. Okay, and so because the other thing I have in here is shuttles. You mentioned shuttles, and I would see that running back and forth between the different large employers in there. They get their employees back and forth because trying to cross Continental Boulevard at this time of year after work is over, I think would be problematic, if not downright dangerous. So, the other concept or the other thought I had is a pedestrian bridge. But that's, again,
Well,
that's a whole nother
Yeah,
issue, but
the other thing to keep in mind is that, I mean, we can certainly discuss sidewalks on our portion of Industrial Drive and on Continental Boulevard, but the reality is that those sidewalks have nowhere to go. So, you know, it's a bigger issue than just this one site, and, you know, I guess you got to start somewhere.
Right.
Well, it's a little bit different than that, though. I mean, you're really talking a lot in this presentation about how Fidelity and Atrium and these guys in your neighborhood are going to make use of this. Well, they're going to walk, or at least they might.
They may.
Um,
But the reality is that you know, Fidelity doesn't have any sidewalks that go out to the road either, and neither does Atrium, to my knowledge. So
they do have one.
They do have,
They-
Atrium has part.
Okay.
Atrium has one.
sidewalk.
That comes
And
out to the corner of Greens Pond,
Oh, okay.
and it runs.
You know, that being said, I mean, it is, you know, Fidelity's got a fabulous trail system, so,
Yeah.
for their employees' use, and, you know, so they're not averse to walking, but,
And they may not in the wintertime. I mean, I get the point why all these buildings are connected, so you don't have to go outside when it's cold like today. And I get that, but at least some kind of a crosswalk or something built into this plan to get you to cross that street if you chose to.
yeah.
And the more you close off your site to have internal pathways but no external ones, the more you make sure nobody in the community can actually walk
Right.
to get to
Right.
your place, and you kind of undermine that whole sidewalk thing. But don't want to get lost in the details. I'm sure that you'll. Yeah, I'm sure that you've heard the message.
We'll figure it out, yeah.
Heard the message on that.
Bob, I got a couple
Jeff,
questions.
please.
Looking at your diagram, I noticed a lot of ground level parking. Of course, the ground level parking next to the parking deck.
Up here,
Yeah.
and then there's parking
all
on the
that area
street,
there, right.
over here and over here.
Why any at all? Why not put all the parking in the deck?
Well,
Or underneath the
because,
residential Oh, and then turn all this into pedestrian.
yeah,
Everything inside is
There's
pedestrian.
some advantages with handicap accessible stuff to bring a few closer to the building, and like you said, I think the
well,
vibrance
there are, I mean,
of the-
I think people, well, first of all, you need to have emergency vehicle access. So there's
that's-
something about being on a street, and unless you have, you know, there's a vitality about being on the street and seeing people come and go, either pedestrians or vehicles or whatever. And I mean, I hear what you're saying.
Pedestrian, all pedestrian. The whole inside is all pedestrian.
I frankly don't think that would work.
Okay.
And, you know, you'd get major pushback from any kind of retail tenants. Even office tenants want to have the ability to come and go in front of their buildings and have some visibility from streets. And you know, I can't tell you how many failed pedestrian malls there are in the United States. And, you know, it seems like a good idea, but it's better to even have one lane of traffic in front of places, because otherwise, you know, it becomes a burden to go there. And, you know, whether we can change that over the next 15, 20, 30 years, you know, for whatever reason, Americans have an aversion to walking.
If I may,
Yeah,
that has been a topic of discussion for us.
Yeah, okay.
We have debated it, and that's certainly still on the table.
You know, the obvious thing about all this ground level parking, though, is in the wintertime, it snows, all these cars are covered with snow. In the garage, they're all nice and clear.
Yeah.
Unless you get there late and have to park on top.
Unless you park on top.
Gordon, one of Jeff's comments sort of brought to mind the fact that with the hotels and the residential and the office stuff that you've got going on there, all of that requires some truck deliveries
Service,
and services and things. And it looks like the only ways that trucks would get that is sort of through the front door, so to speak.
There is only one door. And we have begun to give that some thought. We haven't resolved that, Mr. Chairman. but there will obviously need to be delivery bays and so forth. I mean, it's not as intensive as perhaps like a grocery store would be or something like that, where you're getting almost daily deliveries by semi-trucks. A lot of the smaller retailers and even restaurants get deliveries essentially in box trucks because they are getting daily deliveries, but they're getting deliveries in smaller vehicles. So it is an issue that we need to address. I think it's in large part going to be an architectural solution. So you'll have
I like that idea of having because the less visible it is, the better.
Right.
How you come up with that, but also deliveries are probably less intrusive than the amount of trash that you're going to have to haul out of a lot of this site.
Yeah.
People don't carry their trash very far. Disney
No,
studied
that's
that. You got
absolutely
about
true.
50 feet before it hits the ground. So how do you get it off the site? Where's the dumpster or dumpsters or all of that kind of thing? And obviously that's not an answer that you would have today, but when it comes to site planning,
Yep.
we'd want to untangle that bit of it
Yep.
too.
One more question. Was there any thought given to reversing the office and hotel buildings?
We actually started that way, Mr. Sebring. And this is kind of where we wound up. And I honestly can't tell you why.
We can blame the architect for that.
Well, I
but-
can tell
but
you
that-
why I'm
I-
raising the question. If you have residents who work in the office buildings, they're all, every day they walk through the hotel. I would think you'd want to switch that around. But I'll leave that to you.
That's been, as Gordon said, it started out
Okay.
the other way.
All right.
And it may well go back there.
Okay.
To some extent, that retail business counts on you making all those people walk through.
Well,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
That's right. It's like, walk them through the casino before
Right.
they play there.
Just two things I forgot to mention earlier, and I presume you mentioned all the utilities except sewer, and I know you had originally planned some sewer here, and how does that line up with what was in the
We have
original
not
plans?
had, we haven't had that discussion yet. There is, my understanding is that there is plenty of capacity at the plant.
I agree. Yeah.
When we did the outlet project, we went the other way with the sewer, and we made an improvement over off of DW Highway. So we took a section of line and reversed the flow and connected it to another place in the system. And the reason that we did that was that there were some capacity constraints in that line that goes the other way. I don't anticipate. So I guess the short answer is that we're thinking that there's adequate capacity in that line now that we made that change. Alternatively, we can always put in a pump station because there's plenty of capacity in the line that we did. I mean, it's
Okay.
like a 15-inch sewer, and in the world of sewers, that's a huge line.
Okay, it just didn't get mentioned, and
So
before.
Yeah,
brace
we
yourself for the debate
we
about
haven't
pump
worked through the
stations.
details. It's
Yeah.
something we know we have to address,
Yeah.
but one way or the other,
Yeah.
we'll be able to address it.
The other detail is, I don't know if you know about the ground conditions here, the subsurface.
We know a lot about them.
I thought you might, and maybe you'd like to speak to it, just to
Well,
put the minds at ease.
when we
Yeah.
when we undertook the outlet project, I don't know how many borings there were at the time. There were like 100 borings or 150 borings that they did to fully characterize the subsurface conditions. There was a pond there at one point, and that was filled up with stumps and debris from when they built the ponds over at, as I understand it, when they built the pond over behind Spartan Way. So there is some unsuitable material in one area of this property, and that's going to have to be addressed. There also is some ledge, but certainly by no means the ledge removal that we dealt with up on top of the hill. So, there may be some trench blasting, there may be some localized blasting, but it's by no means, we're talking thousands of yards, not millions of yards. So we know we have some work in front of us, and as we go forward, we will come to grips and come up with adequate plans to protect what we know is a very sensitive area.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to put it on the table. Thank you.
To follow on Nelson's comment about sewer, and I'm sure you can address it, or will expect to, you probably have already expected to address where you're going to get your water, and that the MBD can supply it, and everybody's happy about that.
Yeah, we need to have the discussion with MVD.
Tom?
But we don't even know how much we need yet, so
Yeah.
that's...
You were talking about the buffering on the Camp Sergeant Acres side. What are your ideas, your discussion so far for providing the buffering on
right
that
now
side?
there is a 100-foot wooded buffer. I know that this time of year, Mrs. Harrington, who is an abutter to the site, raised an issue regarding the semi-transparency of that buffer in the wintertime. I mean, I think that, there's two things. One is that we may be able to, because of the change in the roadway configuration from what's there today, we may be able to augment that berm somewhat and make it longer and fatter in that more westerly area. There is a gravel wetland facility that is right in this location that actually is treating water that comes from the Sergeant Acres. We are the grateful recipients of their stormwater. So we chose to treat that water and before it's released. So that needs to stay there, and so that limits our ability to berm along that edge. I think that a rational solution there may be to augment the existing treat buffer with some additional evergreens that will maintain their branching down to the base. Not so sure hemlocks are a good idea given the invasive pests that are attacking them in this area, but certainly firs and spruces, and there's a bunch of other stuff that we could plant in that edge and augment that buffer for the neighbors. I think certainly 100 feet is more than adequate to provide a reasonable buffer.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, please.
To your point, we've talked today about our abutters and the commercial and industrial abutters. I understand the Sergeant Acres, their concerns, and they are going to be part of the process. It's important to me that they are. I've come to know them, quite a few of them over the years, and
You're still on first name basis with them, probably.
Yes. But they are going to be part of the process, and they will be involved in when we come before you the next time. We hope to have them, maybe not in support of the development, but at least placated by a buffer that they accept. So
Okay.
they will be part of the process.
All right. Well, this, as we've said before, this is a conceptual discussion, but
Yes.
we'd like to make sure everything's covered.
A couple of comments with regard to need. I'm dealing in the housing industry all the time, and I know that there is a huge need for this type of residence. This generation, this economic section of the population is not as interested in buying homes as a lot of their older peers have been. So they are looking for small, they don't want a huge place they want just a place to put their head down at night, and that's it. So there is a demand for this, and we don't have this in town, and I think we do need it. So I think that's what you're hearing from the Atriums and the Fidelities. So I would commend you for including that as part of this. There's also a huge demand for a good hotel with function facilities. Even when the Merrimack Hotel was here and functioning, it did not have good function facilities. So to have that type of thing here, there's also a huge demand, not just for the employers there, but for the general population in town. There are people that are looking for this in town all the time. And to the movement of, or the swap between the hotel and the offices, there's some synergy between residences and hotels. A bazillion years ago in a former life, I worked for a hotel that had 4 towers. 2 of them were residences and 2 of them were transient. And there's many hotels that are actually designed that way. So having them connected, there is some reason for doing that. So don't automatically
Agreed.
discount it.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions by board members? Desiree?
I was just observing mostly. I'm liking what I'm seeing with the plan. Yeah, no, mostly notes from you guys, notes from everybody else saying stuff. I'd like to see, I like the habit trail that you guys have put around the building for the winter time access around it. I'd like to see, as this gets developed, more and more of the landscaping kind of becoming something where it helps to soften, because it's going to be a lot of building. You're looking at 4 or 5-story buildings, 6-story buildings. So it would be nice. I'm definitely a fan of the green screens. If you put that up on buildings, whether it be even the parking garage on there, that with a mix of materials to block off some of the views into the parking garage. I'm an architect, so I'm definitely interested in seeing more of that stuff. And I guess that's really my only input, but I'm liking what I'm seeing. I have no issues with the buffer at this point. It seems reasonable. The town-owned land buffer that you have along the Continental Boulevard side of the property, as long as that stays fairly wooded through there, I don't even see that as an issue, even though that side is still really, in the appearance, more commercial than residential on that side. So, no problems. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions by the board? Let's let the public and the abutters and citizens weigh in. I'm glad to see it starts with a hug.
I think I wouldn't be here, do you? Yes, we are on a first-name basis. I got to sign this, don't I? Nancy Harrington, 11 Spruce Street. And yes, I am an abutter. Conceptually, I don't really think the neighborhood has a problem, to be honest with you. I know. Nelson's like, really? Because the reality is, everything except the residences were already approved, and we know that. And Tom is absolutely right. We've had just a few moments of discussion, and what we're going to try to do is get the direct abutters together with Tom and come to a consensus, some solution. What you see is green up at the top. That is correct. It's 100-foot, and we've got that little drainage there, so it's really less than that in terms of visibility. But right now, in terms of, well, anytime you don't even leave. So if you really take a look at the entrance and exit, and you mentioned the noise, the trucks coming in and out, depending upon where they put the trash cans, will determine the noise level. So I think the architectural wall is probably more of an issue, a possibility, than a berm, only because I don't think you have that much space. You'd have to take down a lot of trees to put a berm up. So anyway, that is my hope. That I think Tom is right. It is our hope that when we come back next time, to the surprise of all of you, we will come back with a consensus and everybody will be happy. Okay.
So for tonight, you don't hate it, but don't love it?
Oh, I think it's kind of a classy place. I always have. And I do understand. I think it's very dense. I have a problem with that. I agree with you in terms of the landscaping. It's a lot of building, but those are issues you guys have to take care of. I think conceptually, it's not a problem.
You know, the density is an interesting point to bring up because there is such a disparity between what different generations look for. And I like where I live, where I have an acre, and then there's some land around me, and maybe a little bit more. And maybe if I could someday upgrade that to 5 acres, that'd be okay too. But there's really, like Lynn says, there's a whole generation of folks who really want to be across the hall from their friends. And
I grew up in the city,
yeah,
so I do understand both.
so thank you for that.
Well, so that's,
Any questions?
and I'm
for Ms.
glad
Hunt?
that the sidewalks have come into play, and I'm very happy Mr. Mills is happy with the Rotary. As soon as I saw that, I knew you were going to be pleased with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other abutters or citizens wish to weigh in? Take a minute to get settled in and sign in, and then introduce yourself and tell us what's on your mind.
I shouldn't have taken my glasses off. Hi, I am Barb Amaral, and I'm at One Spruce. And I just, I guess, would like to second concerns with noise. And another concern is light pollution. With high buildings, I'm not sure what can be done to help with that, but I just wanted to put that out there. So I guess those are really the two things. I mean, right now, the most annoying thing is we get the reverse beep, beep, beep from the trucks that come up the access road.
Mm-hmm.
So already there's, I mean, obviously it's not a huge thing, but when you hear that in the middle of the night, it's kind of annoying.
I definitely get that. There's a conversation that goes on about those things because the Department of Transportation requires them, the trucks, to have those backup alarms on them, and you're not allowed to muffle them, you're not allowed to defeat them, you're not allowed to disarm them, you're not allowed to turn them off during certain hours. And everywhere they go, they encounter people who would rather sleep and not hear a backup alarm. But keep up with us with the noise, and we'll do what we can to kind of watch how the project develops and understand more about it. With the lighting, there's a bit more formality to our regulation that we'll have them submit something called a lighting plan, which shows where all their lights are going to be, and then they actually study how that light will fall in the surrounding area, and they map it by candle power and every few feet across the whole parcel. And they've got to guarantee that they're not shedding light across the property line onto somebody else's. So that'll be a part of something that not only we look at, but it's peer reviewed by another engineering company to make sure that they designed it right and that they did their math right. I don't know about Mr. Monahan, but with the outlet malls, even after it was built, when there was a couple of issues that came up that weren't expected, a little bit of conversation with them had them out there fixing it. So they've really done what they could to be as respectful as they could on that lighting, and I feel that we'll get that right because we understand the science of how lighting works a lot better than how you muffle noise.
I also just wanted to add, I do appreciate the not opening up the access road.
Understood. Thank you. Anyone else wish to weigh in and provide some information on this? Seeing none, let's close the public hearing on this and have Gordon come back up. I don't know if you want to speak to anything you heard. There really wasn't a whole lot of discussion.
No, I'm pretty confident that we can, as you indicated, we can deal with the lighting issues. With respect to building massing, although the parking garage is going to be either 5 or 6 levels above ground, that's not a full story. So they'll be consistent with about, with the massing of that would be allowed for an office building, for example. And I'm very confident that we can deal with light spillover and even noise from that kind of facility. The retail building that we're showing next to it is actually a very it's a shorter building. It's going to be like a high bay 1-story kind kind of building, and then the office building kind of is what it is. But that all angles away from the property line, so that's further away from the neighbors than some of the other uses. So we're cognizant of the issues. I think to the extent that we can come up with architectural solutions for trash pickup and loading facilities, that's going to help with the noise, and so we'll just have to work through it as we go. So
Thank you,
thank
Gordon.
you very much for your input. I really appreciate it.
Is there anything that you needed us to discuss or provide some feedback on that we haven't done so far?
Just one thing. I guess I'm a little unclear as to how, and I think, again, you have the ability to do whatever you see fit to do under your regulations. But the logic that I used to come up with kind of an allowable density for residential, and frankly, your regulations are crafted in a way that I think sort of contemplates a large site with, kind of residential over here and, retail over here and commercial over here, not an integrated development like we have here. So this is a little bit of a different animal than what has been presented before. But the logic that I use, since the regulations or the ordinance points you toward the PRD density calculations, is this is a 20-acre site. If we can do 6 units an acre, that's 120 units. If you think about that, if they're all 2-bedroom units, that's 240 bedrooms. So I guess I kind of am framing that in my mind as, an outside. I don't think there's any way we're doing 240 bedrooms here. But maybe, am I on the right, am I smoking crack or,
I'll let each of the board members kind of offer their own thoughts on it. For me, I think that you are on the right track. I think being in a conditional use permit sets you up to be able to do those kinds of balancing efforts with how you approach it, whereas you might not if you're in a traditional subdivision. But to me, the density regulations are about water and sewer, because the density that you're going to have on the soil if you're trying to do subsurface matters and all of that, and then traffic. And so if you've solved the water, sewer, and traffic problems, you've got the opportunity to do more for density, in my view. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I'll give them. Lynn, Nelson?
I would agree with the chairman on that point.
Okay.
Any other comments on that? Does that work for you?
Yep,
for an answer?
absolutely.
Okay. If you don't have any more for us, thank you for coming in.
I think we're all set. Thank you very much for taking the time with us.
Thank you, Gordon.
Very much.
So item 5 on our agenda is Sean Farrell as the applicant and Brett W. Vaughn Revocable Trust as the owner, and its review for acceptance and consideration of final approval of an application for a 3-lot minor subdivision. The parcel is located on Wilson Hill Road in the R1 Residential and Aquifer Conservation Districts and Wellhead Protection Area, Tax Map 4A, Lot 4. Jillian, is there anything that we need to know for you from the applicant?
Robert will take this one.
Thank you. Robert.
Yep. There's a couple things. November 18th, they did get a variance from the ZBA to create the largest lot with 209 feet of frontage instead of 250. There's been some discussion with the Community Development Department, Public Works Department, and also Conservation Commission about the fact that they are not showing a shared driveway access for 2 of the lots.
Hang on 1 second, Robert. Let's give these folks time to clear the room a little bit just so I can hear it. I know that they'll do their best to do that. There we go. Now
Sure.
Let me have it.
Sure. So, like I said, there's been some discussion between Community Development, Public Works, and Conservation Commission about the applicant not showing a shared driveway for lots 4A4 and 4A1. So, you might want to get into that with the applicant. And also, there's been an administrative discovery per se. Proposed map 4A, lot 4-1, actually already exists elsewhere off of County Road. So the assessing department just late this afternoon came up with a proposal for how to renumber that situation. And so as a part of a conditional approval, the board should just mentioned specifically that the lot numbering deficiency regarding that proposed lot 4-1 be resolved between assessing, building, fire, and community development.
All right, so no reusing the numbers that are already in use.
Right.
I'm sure you won't have an objection to that. Please introduce yourself for the record and tell us about the project.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Chad Brannon. I'm a civil engineer with Fieldstone Land Consultants. Our office is located at 206 Elm Street in Milford, and we will be representing Brett Vaughn this evening and Sean Farrell, the applicant, who is also here this evening. We are before you tonight seeking a 3-lot subdivision to subdivide tax map parcel 4A4. The property is located across from 123, 121, and 119 Wilson Hill Road and is situated on the south side of the road. Excuse me. The subject parcel consists of approximately 28.03 acres of land and has 709.9 linear feet of frontage along Wilson Hill Road. The site is bordered by residential properties to the north, east and west, and the Salhegan River to the south. Zoning for the property is R1 residential district, and the minimum lot size requirement for this zone is 2.3 acres of land with 250 feet of frontage. And the 2.3 acres of land is the minimum. As you are probably well aware, this zone requires 100,000 square feet of contiguous upland area. The topography of the site generally slopes to the south to jurisdictional wetland areas, eventually discharging into the Salhegan River on the southern boundary of the property. Again, the proposal that we have before you consists of creating 3 new residential lots. The first lot, as depicted on the right-hand side of the plan, is lot 4-2. It will be approximately 2.38 acres in size with 250 feet of frontage. The second lot is depicted as lot 4-1, which will be approximately 2.99 acres in size with 250 feet of frontage. And then the third lot, lot 4, will retain the remaining 22.67 acres of land with 209.9 feet of frontage. And as Mr. Price stated, we were before the zoning board on November 18th, and the ZBA granted a variance to permit this subdivision with lot 4 having only 209.9 feet of frontage, whereas 250 feet is required. That variance was conditioned on obtaining approval before you this evening. Each of the lots will be serviced by private wells, septic systems, and private driveways. The construction of the driveways to access lots 4 and 4-1 will require a wetlands permit to upgrade an existing crossing at this location. The construction of the driveways with appropriate erosion and sedimentation controls will impact 683 square feet of wetland area. The wetland disturbance has been minimized by aligning the driveways to cross the wetlands in close proximity to each other and over the area where the existing crossing is. Again, as Mr. Price stated, we did go before the Conservation Commission on January 11th. We reviewed this proposal with them, and it's my understanding that they submitted an email to the board dated January 15th, which I received a copy of this morning. Within their email, they kind of summarize it with 2 recommendations, and we don't have any issues with those recommendations stipulated in the Conservation Commission's email. I do want to clarify one suggestion that was mentioned in the Conservation Commission's letter. It was not it was not part of the conditions. They had 2 conditions. It was not part of those 2, but I do want to clarify their desire for the house on parcel 4A4 to be located outside of the 250-foot shoreline setback. Although we prepared a plan depicting house locations and driveway locations for all 3 of the lots, the intention, and it is noted specifically on the plans, is not to fix the houses in those locations. Each homeowner shall have the right to make adjustments to the house location If they so choose to locate the house within the 250-foot shoreline setback, then there would just need to be additional level of permitting required for that house location. So I just want to be clear, we did represent that before the commission as well. I think in general, their desire is for us to be as far away from jurisdictional areas as possible, so we certainly understand why that would make it to an email. It's, again, not part of a recommendation that they made pertinent to the conditions, but it was stated in there, so I don't want to mislead the board this evening into thinking that we were in agreement with that particular statement.
Understood.
In regards to the driveway, it sounds like there's been some discussions amongst the staff regarding the reasons why we have 3 individual driveways on this site. All 3 of the driveways meet all of the requirements within the local regulations. It is the desire of the applicant to have private driveways because he plans on residing on the large lot, the 22-plus acre lot. Privacy and security is a huge thing. It has an impact on lots being marketable. Also, the common driveways have a purpose, but at the same time, they have kind of never-ending shared responsibilities, and sometimes those arrangements do not work out. Sometimes your relationships with your abutters are better if you guys can have your own access and privacy, and that is what we are seeking this evening. We believe we put a plan together that meets all of your criteria and all of your regulations. The driveway curb cuts will satisfy site distance requirements, so we'll certainly be safe. The additional wetlands that we're proposing to be impacted, being 683 square feet, we believe are very reasonable in as far as an impact. We have had our wetland scientists obviously delineate the wetland boundaries. He's also, he actually presented the application before the Conservation Commission and has stated that the wetlands in this area are not of high value. Also, if we did design a common driveway, there would still be wetland impacts required because the existing crossing is not adequate in size. It would have to be substantially wider to meet common driveway standards. So we would be looking at potentially very negligible differences in wetland impacts. But again, I don't want to speak in that direction too much, Mr. Chairman, because the desire here is to have separate, distinct, private driveways for this subdivision. So with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have. I did go over the staff memo. We do not have any problems with any of the conditions that were outlined, with the exception of the one pertaining to the shared driveway.
Thank you, Chad. How long is the long driveway?
Let me just see.
Well, according to the fire department's recommendation, it's over 1,000 feet.
It is over 1,000 feet to get to that house location that we're showing.
So the fire department's weighed in on that?
They have. There's some
Item
comments in
7A,
the
Mr.
staff memo.
Chairman, in the comments.
We do not have any problems with the
They
fire
want
department's.
Full-size driveway, and they want to turn around for the apparatus at the far end.
Okay.
The driveway that we're showing is roughly 1,300 feet in length.
So you don't have a problem building all of that at 16 feet wide?
I mean, typically, I think they say 16 clear span, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So,
Minimum clear of 16 feet.
right.
And you've got to have
Is
a
that a-
hammerhead or something at the far end. So
Yeah,
you
we
can spin
certainly
the
understand
equipment
the.
around.
Is it a paved driveway or is it going to be sand and gravel?
It would be gravel, but we would like to retain the right to pave it if so
Yeah, I don't have.
desired down the road. But
I don't
we
have
have
a
no
problem with
intention of proposing that to be paved. So the way we understand the fire department's comments, and we'd certainly clarify that with them, but clear width of 16 feet typically means that there are no obstructions for the vehicle. You could still have a driveway of, say, 14 feet hard surface. But you just have to make sure that there's no obstructions for the apparatus as you travel down the road.
Well, I think it's not only that. I mean, on a driveway of this length, you got to accommodate the possibility that a vehicle's coming the other direction.
That's true.
Now, 16 feet's more than wide enough for two vehicles to pass each other, even as big as a fire truck. But if it's not, if it's partially grassed and grown over and not necessarily maintained as a travel way, you don't really have the ability, especially if there's snow banks and that sort of thing. So I think that's probably what they have in mind, is that they really expect to have to meet somebody leaving the fire at the time that they're heading towards it.
That could be, and we would be happy to work with the fire department on finalizing the design. We've done, over the years, we have done a number of driveway designs that are significant in length, and many of which have been longer than this. And there are other alternatives to larger width driveways. A lot of times you can do a pull-off, every 500-600 feet, and that'll satisfy the fire department. I would just like to have some flexibility in the finalizing that design, if at all possible. But certainly understanding we have to put together a design that would satisfy the fire department's
Yeah, that's the
requirements.
flexibility that I would give you personally, is as long as the fire chief's happy, I'm happy. But you got to make them happy. I get both sides of the conversation about shared driveway. Privacy and security, not as much in this case, because the one driveway literally goes within feet of the other one and right by the person's house. But I am 100% in favor of your position and your argument when it comes to not making the neighbors partners in dealing with snow and maintenance and all of that. That's always a disaster. So I support you with that. I do get the argument that having two accesses relatively close together onto Wilson Hill Road, but with a single residence at each one, it's not particularly compelling. How close are those two driveways going to be to each other when they get to Wilson Hill Road?
They're 70 feet apart.
70?
Center to center.
Center to center.
Yeah.
Well, that's not terrible. I thought they were closer than that. And looks like one of them will line up with the one across the street.
That's correct.
Is that for the 123?
That is Mr. Vaughn's driveway, yes, 123.
And then the other one will be a little direction. So that has the potential, obviously, with a proposal that's already been presented to us conceptually, to have a few houses down that, not just one.
Certainly.
With wetlands nearby you and actually between you and the neighborhood, we don't really face any of those well water production issues that we were talking about before with the 17. Or am I wrong?
I'm not a hydrogeologist, but I think the way we look at this is it's a minor subdivision, conventional lots. It's not a cluster development that seeks relief from the ordinance at all. So I think by right, any landowner can drill a well on a conventional lot. But there certainly is a drainage divide between this subdivision and the abutting properties to the north.
I don't at all question whether you have the right to drill your own well. I just want to make sure that they're going to work and be productive. But I don't think that they face the same kind of issue, because I think you've sort of crossed the ridge in the land that divides the dry from the river. Other thoughts or questions by other members of the board? Nelson?
Yeah, I have some questions. First of all, the layout of this subdivision kind of puzzled me. If I were going to do this, I would have made lot 4A 4-1 be the deep lot and cut the other lot off, the 4A4, up at the road, and make it that way. That way the guy's driveway is on his own property. It goes down to where he wants to put a house down here in the valley, and it just makes a better layout. My view.
And I can address that.
Please,
just
please
go. When we actually contemplated a number of different configurations for this development, and the one thing that Mr. Farrell, the applicant, wanted to do is make sure that he provided himself with as much privacy and separation to the frontage lots as possible. I mean, that's one of the main reasons of having such a large lot. But speaking directly to your point, we actually did evaluate the west side of the property for a frontage lot. But unfortunately, that piece of land does not meet the 100,000 square feet of contiguous upland area along the street. And so we couldn't carve out just the front end of that lot, if you will. We would have had to come back all the way to where 4A4 is labeled on the plan.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
it would have really taken away from the intent, which is to have a nice large parcel for Mr. Farrell and his family. So that, unfortunately, wasn't really ideal. Just speaking to the separation between the driveways, I mean, one of the reasons why the driveways are close together is because we are trying to avoid and minimize the wetland impact. We certainly could have separated the driveways more, but then we'd be proposing a completely new wetland crossing, and we would contemplate some slopes, so the fills would be, slightly higher. That's really part of the reason why we moved the driveways slightly closer together, because we felt we could take advantage of an existing impact that would typically viewed favorably on a conservation level, and certainly at the state when we submit for that permit. But we did look at, and I think it's a great question, because it does jump out at you as to why are you not utilizing the front of that piece of property. Yep.
Yeah. Well,
I agree with you with the notion of pinching, if you're going to have two separate driveways, pinching them together and getting across the wetlands in one spot, I support that. I think that makes sense. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Nelson.
well, that's okay. You're right on the point I was going to bring up next, is why not make them coincident at the wetland crossing? Mm-hmm.
Well, then you and your neighbors are partners on plowing it.
Yeah.
Well,
it is.
That works, and maybe it doesn't.
That one little piece, yeah.
Yeah, well, either way, and that is not something that my client would like to do, but speaking to that point, anything that we do at this crossing would require additional wetland impacts. So as soon as you acknowledge that, or when we looked at that and acknowledged that, we said, all right, so we're going to have to impact, let's say it's 300 square feet to improve the crossing to meet driveway standards where you have to contemplate the slopes and all the local criteria. It's another 300 square feet, maybe more. Maybe it was 2 and 4. I can't remember the exact numbers. But to have two separate driveways. Personally, I would prefer to have my own driveway where I know I'm going to care for it. I'm going to be responsible for it. I don't have to worry about somebody else not doing it the way that I would do it. And I can understand that stance. And I think in this application where, we can provide, where we can meet all of the local regulations and provide safe access to all the lots and have them be independent of each other, I mean, my opinion is that's the way we should do it.
But could I, Mr. Chairman? I mean, taking your point, and I understand everything you've said, but given that they get close together for the wetlands, and I'm still agreeing with you to have two driveways, I don't understand why, from the point where they get so close together, you don't run them almost parallel to the road, so that there's it's one real big curb cut instead of two little ones. I've seen that done a lot. I mean, I'm thinking of the town on Hollis where they do a lot of that. They are independent, but they're right alongside where they enter the road and then diverge. I don't understand. Given that you've gone close together already, why not put them close together where you cut into the road? Simply, I mean, I know each house is going to maintain its own driveway, but it's neater and less I think it would look better. That's an opinion. But I'm not forcing it down your throat.
And I think there's some flexibility to doing that. It's, we could bring them closer together if that was something the board, felt was more desirable. The main purpose is for us just to have separate driveways.
Absolutely.
But speaking to why we didn't bring them right together. If you're familiar with the site, there's actually a very large kind of gravel apron in this area. So what we did is we located both of the driveways within that existing footprint.
Okay.
That's kind of a pull-off already. But we certainly, we could bring them closer together if that's something the board.
Well, I think you're it's going halfway to meeting what the 10A, which is in the staff's recommendation.
Well, to me, though, I think that there's some value with respect to traffic movements to have the two driveways a little bit apart from each other, so people aren't confused about who's turning where and can I pull out yet, or is this guy going to turn in front of me or behind me? And usually, certainly with commercial, we would tell you put your driveways apart from each other. And I get that the frequency with which two cars at neighboring houses hit the driveway at the same time probably happens about once a year. But that's why I was thinking separation, but I don't have strong feelings.
Well, let me put you one. The other argument for it is that if you, I know it presupposes there's going to be children, but if you put them close together, it's one stop. If you have them 70 feet apart on a road with no sidewalks, and we come to sidewalks in a minute, it's two stops. I'm just being practical.
Well, they're going to have 17 stops across the street.
No, they aren't. They'll all come down to the bottom. And therefore, that even makes my case, Mr. Chairman. If you have the two houses here and the 17 houses there, you can have them all one stop for the bus. I'm only trying to be practical.
I will say this much: the preference is to have separation, and the only reason that I say that is I know in speaking with the applicant, they want to be able to manicure their entrance, and if you have separation, I think that allows you to do that. Again, if the board feels that it's necessary that they're closer together, I think that the applicant would be willing to compromise, but the preference is for there to be separation.
Lynn, are you raising your hand? Or you
Yeah, I have no issue with how they're designed. I absolutely agree with you that they should be separate. I deal with shared driveways and recorded stuff all the time, and they are a pain. So don't even consider doing that. And I agree with having them separated out because then there's two distinct entrances. There's no confusion about which house you're going to. I have no problem with how they're designed right now.
Yeah, that's true. You put a mailbox at the end and somebody knows how to get to your place. You're still going to have an easement over the other lot, though, for that driveway. So
That's correct.
that's got to be recorded. Other comments or questions by members of the board? Nelson?
One more. The pitch of the driveway, what's the maximum slope on that driveway going to the long driveway?
The long driveway, right now, we show a maximum slope of 12%, which is, I understand it exceeds the requirements of 10. We were going to ask for a waiver, and I believe that's through the driveway permit process, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it has to be here. This is the board that approves it. If it's,
That is, it's on the back side of the wetland crossing. The existing grade is basically 12%. So what we've done is tried to match that grade and minimize the land disturbance through that section.
I'm sorry, what's the existing, I don't know what you're talking about, existing, there's an existing pathway you're saying, and
There is an existing access way that goes to the back of the property, if you take a look at.
This is our subdivision regulations we're talking about
Yeah.
here, Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
Although it would be for a roadway more than a driveway.
No,
Yeah.
for a driveway. For a driveway.
You got to demonstrate things. Okay.
It's for the driveway. You're correct, Nelson.
Yeah.
So right through here, you can see the existing cart road that comes down. Right in this section here is where the grade starts to fall off, and we are running at 12% right through here. We did design, it can be built at 10%. The preference would be at 12 because it matches the existing grade. And we did submit the plan and profile.
We have a plan and a profile. Before we go down much further into those details, let's take care of some of the housekeeping stuff and decide whether we've deemed the application complete.
I move that we deem the application as.
Moved by Desiree to
Yeah.
find it complete. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Sebring. Jeff beat you to it. We're
Oh,
going to go
right.
with Mr. Sebring
Good.
today. Any discussion on completeness? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 700 to find it complete. I know we're going to talk about sidewalk waivers, but now let's talk about this driveway bit. So basically, you'd have to get us to waive the requirement that the driveway be limited to a 10% slope when you want to do a 12% slope.
That's correct.
How much fill would you have to put in there to raise part of that driveway to keep it at 10%?
It would be a substantial amount of fill because it runs from. May I flip the board, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, please do. If you have to speak to it, then got to be near a microphone. There we go.
So this shows essentially the plan and profile for the long driveway here.
Okay.
Coming in. And so as you can see, we come off of Wilson Hill Road here, and then we come down. The wetland crossing is right in this area right here. And then the dashed line right here is the existing grade. So you can see we're really trying to follow the existing grade down to the low point right here, and then we flatten right out, and everything's relatively flat from that point on. So it's a 12% grade running for 300 feet, 350 feet, and then we level off to 5%, down to 2, and then down to 4%, ultimately ending at the house location that we're showing here at 2%. If we
So you're going to get over 6 feet deep. In that
exactly,
fill.
if we raise the road 10% over 300 feet, that's I'm sorry, the 2% difference, then you're 6.5 feet or so difference, and that's at the center line. If you project, if you look here, the slopes fall off, so you would have even more fill on this downhill side here. So we believe that certainly a waiver would be justified in this location. It provides, we believe it still provides for safe access. I mean, 12% is a very common grade. In many communities, that is the maximum grade for driveways. DOT's maximum recommendation is 15%. I happen to think that's too steep. But we think that this proposal, as designed, is safe. And so we would appreciate the board considering that waiver this evening. And I do apologize that I didn't submit a formal waiver request for that.
I think if you raise the driveway over 300 feet, the water runoff headaches you'd create for yourself with that big old berm running down the hill drive you nuts.
Well, you don't have to run it on the same pathway. You can run it. You make it longer, but you can. You don't have to do it by filling in on the existing pathway. By rerouting it, you can probably do it without fill.
There's some truth to that, but the reality is that if you look at the road or the driveway, you can see we're already cutting on the uphill side. So the only real option is to move it further into the hill to get rid of the fill, and then we get into even more of a cut here, and we do start to get closer to the potential site for the lot to the east. So we would like to hold that alignment. That's where the existing cartway is, or pathway. That's actually right in here, the pink, and there is another cart road down in here. But the elevation drops off pretty significantly through here. If we followed the cart road in this location and then dropped down, that would be substantially steep through there. So we're trying to average the slope of the land and follow it, the topography as much as we can with the alignment of the proposed driveway.
Do you know if the slope of the driveway was something that the fire department was alerted to as they were looking at your driveway?
I believe that they were looking at this particular plan here, but that's my understanding. Maybe staff could clarify what plan they were looking at. And I know the applicant, Mr. Farrell, just said that John Manuel has driven up and down the property a number of times, so he's familiar with the site. I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but
There was no comment from the fire department on the grade, but Public Works did comment on the fact that they would need relief on the slope.
and we didn't get comments from the Public Works Department. I believe the staff memo says that they're to be addressed once comments are submitted.
It looks like they came in after the packets went out, so we'll have to forward those out.
I think this may end up being something that kind of falls in that same category as the width of the driveway we were talking about before, is that if we were to give you some relief, it might be conditioned on it meeting with the satisfaction of the fire chief. And if he says, I can't deal with a 12% slope on an unpaved road to get all the way down there, then that'll decide it, but I don't think that they would. I mean, I've seen them. We've got 12% roads around town. So.
We would be comfortable with that. Certainly want to put together a design that the fire chief would be willing to sign off on.
Since it slopes away from Wilson Hill Road, there's no water runoff issue. There's no other traffic down that road. So other than the fire department getting down there, I can't think of one reason why I'd be troubled by, whatever the driveway is that the particular household encounters when they get down there. At 12%. I mean, if you're talking 20%, that's a different cat. But in my view, is there other discussion about the request for the waiver of the driveway slope? If not, is the board willing to take some action on that waiver request?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion. We grant the waiver request subject to the fact that the fire department has also got to sign off on it. If they don't sign off on that 12%, then the waiver is revoked.
And that's because of strict conformity would pose an unnecessary hardship for the applicant.
Yes, yeah. No, I go specific circumstances relative to the conditions on the land indicate that the waiver will carry out the...
So the second of the statutory.
Yes.
Is there a second for Alistair's motion to grant the waiver? Second by Councillor Mahan. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 7-0-0 to grant the waiver. So let's talk sidewalks a little bit. I'm sure you want to have us waive those, although it's a minor subdivision, so I'm not sure whether we do or not. Jillian, do we need to take up sidewalks?
You can decide that it's not necessary, or you can grant a waiver. Either way.
Would you like to discuss sidewalks briefly?
I would, Mr. Chairman.
I know you don't want to build them. Just tell us why.
Yeah. I did see in the staff memo that it requested that we may need a waiver request, so I did put together a formal waiver request that I'd be happy to hand in, but I guess just to address it briefly, we would like to request a waiver from section 4.06.1R, which requires the construction of a sidewalk on all subdivisions that have frontage on collector streets. We respectfully request that the board waive this requirement, as this is a minor subdivision and there are no adjacent sidewalks anywhere near the site. The surrounding areas are substantially developed, so the likelihood of there being any interconnection is probably nil. And the roadway configuration and drainage along this section of Wilson Hill Road is not conducive to the construction of a sidewalk in this location. So for all of those reasons, we would like the board to consider a waiver of this requirement.
Chad, what's the questions? Or Will the board?
I think the fact that it's a minor subdivision, we don't need to have a waiver. We can.
It allows us to decide that it's
Yep.
not a
I make a
necessary
motion
condition.
that under section 407, we determine as it is a minor subdivision that no sidewalk is necessary.
Second for Alistair's motion.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Christensen. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 7-0-0 for that. Any abutters or citizens wish to weigh in on this proposal? Please come forward. Share the table with Chad. He's a nice guy.
He's quite safe.
When you're ready, introduce yourself and then tell us what's on your mind.
Is it bright green?
Amy Wood, I live in 119 Wilson Hill Road across from the proposed subdivision there. We actually spoke at the zoning meeting when you came and proposed this at the zoning board. And we had a little bit of a concern about the wetland area that's across from the road, across from our property. It is on our property. We have some, I don't know if it's designated a wetland, but it is wet down there. And it goes underneath the road and onto Brett Bond's property right now, as he owns it, if he still owns it. I think when he put in the driveway or roadway or cart path, some of that terrain was altered. And we started to experience a little bit of backup on that water underneath the road. So I would just ask that if in the development of this subdevelopment, could that possibly be improved upon? I'm out there several times a year on somebody else's property cleaning it out so that I'm not adversely affected by it.
So is there a culvert that crosses under the road?
There is, and actually we flood, and then our neighbor's bottom area floods as well. So, we have to go over there and clean that out.
How big is the pipe?
12 inches. Yeah, it's not
12
that big.
inches? Okay. Thank you for that. Are there other comments or questions you'd like?
No,
for the board?
that's. I just wanted to bring that up. That it was a concern, and we did discuss it at the zoning meeting.
Okay. We'll offer the applicant the opportunity to address your concerns here in a second. So, any other comments for the? Thank you so much for your testimony. Are you here for support, or are you separate?
Well, no. I was just saying the only thing we were worried about was the water drainage out of the thing, because that whole area at the bottom, they call
Okay.
it the wet area in your tax map.
You got to come up and get to a microphone, or I don't mean to be picky about that. The folks at home just can't hear it when you do it that way. So.
No, she's right.
Okay.
Whatever she said, that's it.
Terrific, thanks. Chad, what do we know about the water under Wilson Hill Road and how it's working today versus how it could work going forward?
Sure. So currently there's a 12-inch culvert that goes under Wilson Hill Road in this location here, and then it travels through the jurisdictional wetland area down to our proposed crossing here, where we're installing a 15-inch corrugated plastic pipe. The 12-inch pipe, I believe, is a corrugated metal pipe that goes under Wilson Hill Road. So that's has a substantially smaller capacity. There is 6 feet in elevation difference between Wilson Hill Road, at least 6 feet in elevation difference between Wilson Hill Road culvert and the inlet of our proposed culvert. So we do not anticipate that there'll be any issues. Obviously, we're proposing that culvert get reinstalled because we are making it longer, and we are proposing a head wall on the inlet side. Just that helps prevent blockage of the pipe and allows for the storm water to get into the pipe in a better fashion.
You say you're putting in an 18 because the plan says 15.
It says 15.
You
Did
said
I say
15?
18? I'm sorry. No, 15.
You said 15. I was just misheard. Because I was looking at the one on the other side of Wilson Hill Road that goes across the driveway, that 18. So there's a 12-inch that goes under the road, and then you're going to do 15 across your 2 driveways. And then what's that area look like now? Is it just basically wooded area, undeveloped? Or so that's going to be somebody's front lawn going forward. Are they going to try and keep that from getting all the leaves and junk clogging up any water flow? Or?
Yeah, I think obviously with people living on site, you're going to find, things will get maintained better than, if it's basically a cart road right now. So, I can't speak to what's happened in the past, but, certainly leaves can block a culvert if they're not maintained. A lot of times they'll wash through. But if it's somebody's driveway, residential driveway, just speaking for myself and I know my neighbors frequently will clean the ditch lines and make sure that the culverts can pass the stormwater. So I don't anticipate any issues with the design. I mean, the culvert has been sized and designed to adequately address the stormwater in this particular location.
So once it gets through your 15-inch pipe, it's really going down slope pretty good after that.
Yes, and
there's no backing up after that.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, I misunderstood. I thought the backup was at the culvert going under Wilson Hill Road. Now, you're saying, what?
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah, so what you do, whether yours is 12 or 15 doesn't going to matter, because I think I heard you say the invert was 6 feet below Wilson Hill Road. So
That's correct. We're downslope. I'm
so
just speaking
we're not
to
solving her problem one bit. I mean, everything. Her problem is still with her.
Well, if her problem though is on the north side of Wilson Hill Road, there's nothing these guys can do about that.
Well, that's true, but I just want to make that clear. Yeah, I think we're talking like we're fixing her problem, and that it isn't.
Well, I got the sense when she was talking about coming on somebody else's property to clear things out that she was coming across Wilson Hill Road to do that.
Okay, so where is she clearing the leaves out? Are you clearing the leaves out of the
street?
Across the street?
Across
Okay.
the street, because the leaves all travel down from wherever, because if you've ever been up there.
Come on forward.
You come up and...
I really appreciate it. I'm sorry for dragging you up here, but take a second to sign in and give us the...
Yeah, the leaves come through that 12-inch pipe and kind of back up on the other side of the road on the subdivision that we're talking about. But I think if you're putting in the 15-inch pipes a little bit further down, that's going to provide for more flow through there, and it's not going to back up as much on that side of the road.
That area it's
Plus the-
pocketed.
What's
You know
that?
what I mean? That area pockets on the other side of the road. So what happens is the tree branches and everything get built down there, and then all the leaves come through, and they build a pocket. Then all the water backs up. That area in front of my house becomes a mosquito. In
Yeah,
the
well,
summertime, if I don't keep the water flowing out of there, what ends up happening is mosquitoes, that becomes a mosquito breeding ground. And that area probably gets about 12 inches deep at times, maybe a little deeper. So it kind of settles down, and then it travels underneath my driveway. And my next door neighbors, and we have all the runoff coming from the hill, comes down around my house on either side, and they merge and they come to that area. Where the road is, it pitches straight up, and it goes underneath the road straight. When we get to the other side, all the debris that builds up through time builds a pocket on the other side, and then the water rises on the other side. We've had the water on the other side been deep as to my knee in that area. So what I don't want is building a dam out there to cause that water to get any deeper.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, although I think that if those houses are built across there,
Yeah.
the fact that they're going to be concerned about losing their front lawn,
Yeah.
they're going to be interested in keeping that water going through the pipe.
I just want to make
so.
sure that it stays so it flows out of there, because I don't want that water to back up anymore.
Yep. Thank you very much for coming forward. Did you introduce yourself for the record? I know
My
you signed
name's
in.
James Wood. I signed in also.
Thank you, James.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. Okay, so now we understand what's going on with the water?
I don't completely. It's different than what you said when you said it was 6 feet down to where, unless it's in a puddle or something on your property, it's backing up. It's causing a backup through this pipe that goes under Wilson Hill Road.
I can only speak to what I think I've heard, but I can explain to you what our design is, and then maybe touch on what I suspect might be happening. So the invert out of the corrugated metal pipe under Wilson Hill Road is 6 feet higher than our culvert location. So I don't think the problem has anything to do with our culvert, the existing culvert. I think it's localized. You know, there probably is a low spot on the inside of that jurisdictional wetland area where water will impound during a storm event. If there's washout from leaves that comes out through here, or there's, debris inside that wetland area, maybe it will back up through the culvert under Wilson Hill Road at that time. But it has nothing to do with anything that, we're certainly not going to make that condition any worse because we've sized the culvert appropriately. I think, Mr. Chairman's also touched on what's likely to happen is that when that is now somebody's front yard, it will be maintained and manicured or taken care of, better than it is today.
Best you can, given it's a wetland and you can't mow it.
Right, exactly.
I can only envision this being better.
Well,
Certainly not worse than.
Certainly,
what
we
it
are
is.
not creating any impoundment. That's for sure. There's no impoundments being created. We're not utilizing the wetland areas for detention or impounding water in them at all. We've designed a situation that's a free flow condition. We're proposing to install a culvert at the low point, so any storm water that comes through there will free flow and be diverted downstream ultimately towards the river.
All right, thank you for that, Chad. Seeing nobody else in the room to testify, I close the public hearing. Is there any general discussion or questions for the applicant by the board? Nelson?
I would just like our Public Works to become aware of this and have them have a look at it.
At what specifically? The water?
This drainage situation.
Okay.
Okay? I think he may make some recommendations that would alleviate this issue. He must be aware of it, or he should be made aware of it from what I'm hearing. Okay.
Robert or Jillian, do you have any suggestions as to how we communicate that to Public Works in the context of an applicant who wants us to take some final action tonight?
We can certainly make Kyle aware of that as staff recommendation. Not
Okay.
sure that it needs to be part of the motion.
Does that work?
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions? What's the will of the board with respect to final disposition of the application?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the minor subdivision as requested, subject to the conditions outlined in the memo from Robert Price, dated January 12th, 2016, with the one concession that we will withdraw the requirement for 10A, which is the shared driveway.
And the addition that we're going to have the fire department weigh in
And
on.
the given condition that we've already said, well, that was attached to the waiver as far as I was concerned. But anyway, yes, the waiver that we've granted for the 12% is conditional upon the fire department approving it.
And they're going to resolve the lot number.
The lot number issue.
Oh, the lot numbers, yes, that's sorry, yes. We have to address the issues from the whatever lot numbers they want.
Second for Alistair's motion?
We're going to make Kyle Fox or the Department of Public Works.
Oh,
Yeah, the staff is going to handle that.
The staff said they would handle it, do it indirectly. I wasn't therefore tacking it on the memo, but I can do that.
Why not?
No, she
Oh,
said,
well,
it didn't need to be part of the motion.
Yeah, she got it. She'll make a phone call.
Record.
It's part of the record.
It's part of the record, but not part of the motion.
All right, there's a motion on the table that's been, on the floor that's been seconded by Lynn. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
I'll say opposed.
6-1-0 with Mr. Disco opposed, and you are approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
With that, that brings us to discussion and, the
Item
formal
6.
continuance of item 6. Brett W. Vaughn for the Brett W. Vaughn Revocable Trust as the owner and Allison Jenkins as the owner. Conceptual discussion of a 17-lot cluster subdivision on 2 lots in the R1 residential district located at 123 Wilson Hill Road and South Grader Road, tax map 4A, lot 23, and tax map 5A, lot 1.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that at the request of the applicant, we continue this motion to February the 2nd.
Yes.
February the 2nd, 2016, at 7 o'clock in this room with no further notification to abutters.
Second by Lynn. Any other discussion on the continuance? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 700 to grant the continuance. And that brings us to discussion and possible action regarding other items of concern. I do not have any. Does anyone else have any?
Do we have some minutes, Mr. Chairman? Or is
We've got a little stumble on our minutes in that we've set up the agenda to list the December 15th minutes, which we've already approved. And so the minutes from the meeting that should have been on the agenda, which is our earlier one in January, will be on our next meeting. And we have no minutes to address tonight, correct?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second by Ms. Fault. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? 700. We adjourn. Thank you. Don't forget to turn your microphone off.